we are going to spend this first 45 minutes to an hour on just all things GAPS. So who we are, what we do as an organization, what volunteers are expected to do, but also what you can expect being a volunteer for the organization. We want to give you all of the resources that you need to serve our members. All right, so just very briefly, we're going to go over what is Parkinson's disease. So I know some of you are in the medical field, and you can probably say a lot more about this than I can, but it is a progressive neurological disorder that causes people to lose movement control of their bodies, and everyone experiences Parkinson's disease very differently. So that's the one thing that I make sure that anyone knows, whether they're experienced in details of Parkinson's disease or not, everyone is going to have a different experience. Susan's husband could have symptoms that look nothing like the next person, and so that's just something very crucial to remember. And we're going to talk a little bit about the symptoms, but some of the most common symptoms that you may know of are the tremors, the dyskinesia, so imbalance, rigid muscles, and then impaired posture and balance. This list right here, Lauren, when I first started listening to some of her presentations when she would speak, and I was just getting the hang of things when I started here, she would always say, if you look on here, you might think that you have Parkinson's disease, because these, the symptoms like sweating, pain, you might have, you don't know what you're going to have pain from, extreme fatigue, you might have difficulty with some movements that, as you get older, it's just something that might happen. So don't be alarmed if you look at this. We try to share this with people so that we can educate them on the symptoms, the lesser known symptoms that people may not know about. And so some of those are restricted facial expressions, reduced blinking. So you might look at somebody, and if you don't know they have Parkinson's, they could appear to be, kind of quiet, maybe a little bit dismissive. You might not think they're very friendly because they look like they're frowning at you or grimacing at you, but it's because they actually have lost control of some of the movements in their face. So something to keep in mind, difficulty with writing. People's handwriting actually gets smaller. So think of people who have been, writing their name, writing their signature, or writing their signature on their checks their whole life, and all of a sudden they lose the ability to do that. That's another symptom. Slowed speech and quiet voice. That's one that I think people actually find the most surprising, because when you have Parkinson's, some of the symptoms do include getting smaller and might have a crouched posture. That also happens to your voice. So just something to keep in mind. Swallowing might be difficult. You may see some of our members drooling in the program. That's also just some lesser known symptoms. And then on the cognitive side, hallucinations are a symptom. So around 50% of Parkinson's patients get hallucinations. That comes from the disease itself, but medications also play a part in that as well. And that's something I can't speak more on, but hallucinations are one of those. Depression and anxiety, so on the more cognitive side, that is why we do a lot of the programs that we do, and that's why we start by telling you some of these medical conditions that come with Parkinson's, because towards the end of the presentation we'll talk about, well, here's what's happening to our members, what can we do to help improve their quality of life. And so that's why we have the GAPS Recharge program, where they can come and engage with other members and people going through what they're going through, because some of them do face depression and anxiety and isolationism. And so that's why we try to combat all of these symptoms with all of her programs. And they all kind of cater to people with different symptoms. So just keep that in mind as well. So some treatments, medications have really been the same over the last 40, 50 years. Even just 30 years ago, doctors were telling people with Parkinson's to go home and rest. That's actually something that was probably killing them, because you're supposed to exercise, you're supposed to get movement. Again, that's one of our core missions, is providing exercise to people and other resources that really can help them get up and moving, because movement is actually it's a proven way that people's progression of the disease will slow down. And so that's why we encourage it. But again, 30, 40 years ago, that was not the case. So we're glad that people's minds have shifted and their directions have shifted, but the medication options have not changed. Surgical options, there's DBS, which is deep brain stimulation. We have several members who have undergone that, and I have heard more negative experiences from it than positive, but there's also a lot of other people that have had it that have had successful treatments. I'm not aware of those specifically, but I know there's some out there. Exercise is obviously very important. Daily movement is critical. And then there's therapy. So we have some therapists in the room. Again, you can share more about this than I can, but there's physical, occupational, and speech therapy. And so combined, these are all of the treatments that are available right now. Obviously, there's a lot more that are probably on the way. Hopefully, Lauren, Glenn, and I always say, it's going to be a good day when we lose our jobs, because that means that there's a cure. But until then, we're helping people live the best quality of life that they can. Just again, exercise, exercise, exercise. That's what I tell people every time a new member calls me. They say, what can we be doing? We've just been diagnosed, and I say we because it's not just the person with Parkinson's, it's the family that's affected as well. So we have a weekly exercise program called Gaps in Motion that meets on Fridays here in this building. We're expanding to other locations. We do have a Gaps in Motion program in Seneca and Clemson currently that meets every other Friday. It meets throughout the month, but every other Friday in different locations. And we always emphasize, just getting out there and moving, but we actually have a lot of caregivers that come as well, and spouses, because the people with Parkinson's aren't the only ones that need exercise. Everyone should be exercising and eating well and drinking a lot of water and managing their stress. But exercise obviously is critical. So Lsvt and Power, these are two types of therapies, and I won't go too much into detail on them, but the Lsvt, the voice treatment, this is something that speech therapists, speech pathologists implement, and it's helping people who have lost their voice. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the speech therapists that I know say that it's always going to be most effective when it's preventative. So when the person is first diagnosed with Parkinson's, even if their voice hasn't grown smaller or quieter, they should start doing it now. And that's really because you just want to catch it before it's too late, because by the time your voice gets really small like this, it may be too late to really have the therapy work its magic. And then Parkinson's Wellness Recovery, Power. This is a program that is designed by therapists. It's based in Arizona, and they come across the country and they travel to teach these workshops to get therapists certified in Power. And it's just a therapy program designed to, again, help people with Parkinson's live the best quality of life. Several YMCA programs in the area actually provide Power courses and pedaling with Parkinson's classes. So several of our members are actually members of those YMCAs, and they go and do you have a question? Oh, okay, sorry, I thought that was the hand. So those are some other therapy options. Done with the medical portion. That's good. Any questions so far on that? Okay, great. So you can see here, as many as 1 million Americans are living with Parkinson's currently. 60,000 are diagnosed each year. And then what's even more drastic and really shocking to a lot of people is there are actually an estimated 12,000 people in the upstate alone with Parkinson's disease. So you look at that statistic, and we have just over 1,200 members. So you can see there's a huge gap there. You can see down here that scientists are predicting that the number of people with Parkinson's will actually double by 2040. So if you take a step back, we currently have 1,200 members. That's including people with Parkinson's and their caregivers. But assuming that there are the 12,000 people in the upstate with PD, that actually we're looking at about 24,000 people because you're including their caregivers, their spouses. So it's not just the one person, we look at the whole equation. So that's 24,000 that we should be serving right now, or that we could have the potential to serve. And then you look at 2040 and that number is going to double. So as we grow as an organization, it's really important for us to remember, and for our volunteers to remember, that we have the potential to serve, almost 50,000 people down the road. I hope that it doesn't come to that, but we have to start preparing and making sure we have the stability and the structure as an organization. And a lot of that does come down to our volunteers. We've already talked about this a little bit, but caregiving in the U.S., you can see some of the statistics here. We see not only the person with Parkinson's. It is so crucial for us to make sure we're serving the caregivers as well, and the family members. Gaps Recharged, why most of you are here today, is a program that was designed to help the caregivers. It's a respite program. Caregivers can drop off their loved ones for 3 hours every Wednesday, and we engage with them. They're not just sitting in a chair and not moving, sitting at a wall for 3 hours. It's just a way for them to engage and really engage and meet other people that are going through what they're going through. And even though that's what we see, it's wonderful, but really I think the biggest thing that's happening there is the caregivers who are just getting a break. I asked a woman a few weeks ago, I said, hey, what are you going to do for 3 hours? And she just said, I might just go sit in my car. And I think that's way more common than we think. If I, polled everyone, all the caregivers, and see what they do for those 3 hours, I think a lot of them just want a break. So it's very important for us to focus on the family. And just one little thing about a program of ours that's called Gaps Connect. We do it quarterly. It's a retreat for people who have been newly diagnosed or just new to the GAPS community. We have recently added an adult children session. And that's because we found that we have a lot of adult children who need different services and need different kind of care and discussion. And so we bring somebody in who is familiar in that area to talk to them. So we really are not just focusing on one part of the equation. We very much so focus on the other half as well. All right, so now getting into, why we're here and why you're here today. We started 15 years ago, actually, as an informal group. And our two co-founders, Pat Sullivan, who was a longtime caregiver for his wife, she just passed away a year ago, and then Stan Smith, who has had Parkinson's for almost 20 years. The two of them recognized that there was way more to be done than just having a support group, because the people just kept rolling in, and that's when they recognized that there was something more to be done, and there was something more behind this. So we officially became a nonprofit in 2012, and we established ourselves as a 100% locally funded and founded organization. So we're non-medical, non-research based. Everything we do is structured around providing or maximizing the quality of life of people with Parkinson's and their families. So that is our key mission, and we do that through exercise, advocacy, support, and education. So that's our mission, those are our goals as an organization, and we've touched on a lot of that today. But as volunteers, it's really important to remember that we are non-medical and we're non-research. So everything that we're doing stays completely local. Although it's, we support finding a cure, funding the research, that's not what we do as an organization. We keep everything local. So all of the money that we raise at our annual events and through individual contributions, that all stays here. It goes into our programs and implementing those programs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our programs, and we do have a lot of them. Back in 2012, there was just the support group. And I know I didn't really go into my background too much at the beginning, but I have a personal connection to Parkinson's disease. My uncle had Parkinson's. He had a very advanced case. And so as a Furman student several years ago, I actually came on as the first GAPS intern. And so when I first came, there were support groups. There was only one at the time. Now we have 4. And there was the Lunch and Learns, which were back then called speaker seminars. So you can see that, I mean, that was in 2015 when I joined up as an intern. And so this is just tremendous, the growth that we've seen over the last few years. So on the left side here, these are all of our programs that are really focused on the education, awareness, and advocacy piece. So GAPS Recharge, which we'll talk a lot more about in a little bit. We have the support groups, which are groups that are facilitated by trained volunteers. So if you're ever interested in becoming a facilitator, I highly recommend it. It's a once-a-month commitment. You are split up, so there's a facilitator for caregivers and a facilitator for the PWPs, so people with Parkinson's. And you will go in for an hour and just talk about whatever they want to talk about. So you're facilitating the conversation, but those are in 4 different locations now. We have the GAP Social, and several of you have been to those socials, and it's very fun. We always host them at the Bon Secours Wellness Arena, and we're lucky to have some great community partners who will sponsor those events for us, which is wonderful. And it's so funny. We have people just calling us up all the time asking to sponsor this because it's a fun event. It's uplifting, and it's one of the only events where for many nonprofits, for a lot of different reasons, that you can actually bring the community partners and the board members and the community liaisons, the therapists, the medical professionals, and the people with Parkinson's and their families. And people with Parkinson's and their families feel like, all right, I can actually go out here and really just be a normal person. No one's looking at me funny because I'm tremoring, or it's actually really cool to come and watch. So even if you come and just attend and you're not being a volunteer for the night, I would highly recommend it. It's a wonderful event. We have the quarterly GAPS Lunch and Learn. So we bring in, quarterly we'll bring in different specialists in the field. We have one coming up in August, and an internal medicine doctor is actually coming in and speaking on diet and nutrition with Parkinson's. So we're excited about that. GAPS Connect, as I mentioned earlier, is our retreat that meets quarterly on a Saturday. So we try to cater to everyone's schedules, and we bring in different specialists all across the board. Cora is actually coming in November, so we have one in August and November for the rest of the year. So we'll do a therapy session. We'll typically try to get either a member spotlight or a medical, some kind of neurologist or another doctor coming in to talk about the medicine side of things, but then we'll also break out into support groups. So we try to give them a taste of what GAPS is, but also try to give them resources. Community breakfast, those are just ways for us to get out in the community. So we'll go and give presentations to different communities. So whether that's a faith community, business community, a therapist community, we've done a lot of those. We did a therapist breakfast in the fall. So it's been a great way to find really strong partners and also volunteers. And then on the right side, you can see here, these are all the exercise opportunities. So the Gerald Stroud pole walking, that is something that's been around for several years, and it was named after one of our members who passed, and so his wife comes to that still. Her name's Lois Stroud, and she's a big supporter of that, but again, meets every week. You walk with poles around the track at a local church in Greenville, and then the Gaps in Motion, which we've talked about, that meets here every week, and then out in Clemson and Seneca, and then all the other programs that you see here. These are exercise programs that we have partnered with in the community. So Rocksteady Boxing is a huge deal. I'm sure you've seen it in the news. If you're not familiar with what that is, it is a national program that has several chapters across the United States, and it's a boxing program that's actually designed for Parkinson's patients. It is really inspiring. People feel like, when they put their gloves on, it's like they're kind of fighting back, and it's really cool to watch. And so there was only a Greenville location in the upstate for several years, and now there actually is a Seneca one that just opened recently, just started, and then a Spartanburg location. So when I go into hospitals and the clinics and talk to different patients, I'm able to tell them, well, if you're in Spartanburg, you're in luck because there is this program. So we partner with these organizations so that we can give our members, the best resources. And all of our programs are completely free. And so that is something that if you take nothing else away from today, which I hope you do, but if you take nothing else away, remember that we are 100% locally founded, funded, and because of that, we're able to keep all of our programs completely free. Becoming a member is completely free. We understand that our members have a lot of cost associated with their medical part of this journey, and so we don't want to add that to we don't want to add support to their list of costs. So our 2 annual events that we have Water Cooler Classic, which is in the fall. That is a mini putt-putt tournament. So it is actually it's kind of our higher end event, which I know sounds silly because I just said putt-putt, but it actually is a very cool event that is set up at Zen downtown. It's an event space. It's really more of a business community event. So it's like the way I describe it is it's a business networking event with about 250 people that show up. Some of them are very into golf. They'll bring their own putters. And it's funny to watch, but it really is. People are coming after work, so it's like a happy hour. And you actually, the months leading up to the event, different offices around the area can actually host their own office tournaments and then send their best foursome to the finals. So you can either choose to do that, or you can just come the night of the finals. So this year it's November 7th. We're definitely going to need volunteers for that, and you can just come as a spectator. That event last year, we raised around $77,000, which was huge. And we engaged about 50 businesses in the area. We would love to be able to engage companies outside of Greenville. I think that's typically the main group that we have. But again, as we're trying to expand to different areas, it's going to be really important to connect with those businesses as well. So that's Water Cooler. And that is named after Annette Sullivan, who is our co-founder, Pat Sullivan's wife, who passed away last year. So we decided to name the event after her last year. And then Strikeout Parkinson. So I know, just looking around the room, several of you came to that. If you have not been there, it is our member-driven event. So this is, I actually have chills right now talking about it, because this is just such it has such a big place in my heart. When I was in school, I actually took on and planned this event, and so that was several years ago, where we raised, I say just $55,000, but this year we raised $85,000, and each year we keep increasing it by 25%. It's actually pretty incredible, and it's all because of our members. We have community partners, but our members always bring in the most revenue, but they also, they get all their friends and family to come, and that's what it's all about. Inez's team actually won. We had the ability to, everyone could score runs. They could, if you went to visit a sponsor table, you got a run. If you ran the bases several times, you got a run. And so teams were able to come in, and that was a new component this year. But Inez's team won this year. How many? It was like 700. So, it was a lot of points. A lot of runs, and so.
Well, we had a big group too.
Oh, you had a big group. It was so fun, and so this event is really more of our member-driven event, and it is it's a community awareness builder. So we had nearly 500 people this year. A few years ago, my senior year, we had about 200. So we keep increasing every year, and this event, it's not that different from the other walks that are in the area, because in sense of what it is, it's an event. We're trying to raise money for a nonprofit, but we have a different twist on it, because we start with the walk around the warning track at the Drive Stadium, and it's just one. So people used to think that it was a big walk, like a 5K or 10K, and we finally had to take walk out of the logo because people were getting confused. And I actually think it's really amazing that we just do that one lap, because it's very symbolic for a lot of people with Parkinson's. Some of them, that is a huge deal to get around just one time. And it's a great way for families to get involved. And I feel like I'm not really making much sense, because it's a really cool event. And so if anybody wants to say anything about it, because several of you have been, but those are our 2 main events, and they bring in a lot of our money for what we are doing and what I've been talking about today. Just quickly, these are some community partners that we have. So the 3 top partners that we have are Bon Secours, Prisma, and then Investinet. Those are our main community partners, and they're not just writing us a check and never talking to us until next year. They are invested. Investinet comes to all of our events. They're very, very engaged. Bryce, who is the CEO, he's actually on our advisory board. He is on our water cooler committee and just kind of keeps giving back. And so we're very grateful for Investinet. And then Bon Secours and Prisma, they let me come into the hospitals and the clinics. I go to the clinic several times a month. I'm in the actual offices every week, sometimes several times a week. And they're letting us do that because we're providing a resource for them, but it helps us find more members in the area. And so it's definitely a giving relationship. And then here's some other partners that I've shared already. And these are all the people who let us use their space or will give us in-kind donations. So being a GAPS ambassador, one of those options is coming in and helping me with distributing new member packets and materials to different hospitals, clinics, medical resources, faith communities, community rec centers, anything like that. And so I have a system, and we can talk about that more. We always need volunteers for events and different programs that we have. But these are just roughly volunteer opportunities, and then there's a lot of other things that just pop up, day in and day out. But I will go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you very much for spending your Wednesday afternoon with me. I appreciate it. I really mean it when I say that we could not do this without the volunteers. This organization, we have 3, almost 4 staff people now, and we could not do it without you. So thank you for everything that you do and for taking your time to come here today, because that shows us that you're willing to make the commitment and willing to, help us improve the quality of life of people with Parkinson's.